Welcome to our webinar about a new calculator under development at Solomon. I have very close to zero experience with an actual manufactured housing appraisal. I have completed a CA class and I completed one assignment a long time ago, but we license data from National Building Cost, which does include cost data for manufactured housing, and we've had people asking for this. So we thought we would give it a try, and we want to, consider this to be a beta test. And toward the end of the webinar, we're going to put up a survey form within Zoom. And if you are willing to be a beta tester, and that means, we'll send you a link to this tool and then use it. And probably within a month, if you could give us some feedback, either positive or negative, about the approach we're taking, then you would qualify for a free 1-year use of the product. So our goal is to follow the principle of simplicity. Now, this has been attributed to Albert Einstein, but apparently the origin of this is in dispute. But the principle is that everything should be as simple as possible, but not simpler. So as simple as possible, but not simpler. There are two resources that you will need to use this calculator. First is the user manual, which is linked right here. Now, the other part you're going to need is the lookup the component costs right here. And that is also a PDF. And that is pretty much what you see if you have the manufactured cost data from National Building Cost. Notice they have the classes, and they've got the square foot area numbers. You won't need those because we do those calculations within Solomon. Our goal is to give you a tool that not only does the cost, but helps you do the analytics of the cost approach to support assignment results like effective age, remaining economic life, and then grid adjustments. So the one thing I noticed here in National Building Cost, it says do not use area modification factors for manufactured housing. Now that made me stop and think a little bit. I looked at the 1004C form, and they do have a cost multiplier for the cost data. It says if applicable. And the reason why I think that could be applicable is because a cost data service is really just a survey of local builders and permits and so on at the county level to see what a cost new for either a stick-built house, or in this case, a manufactured house, will be. People don't look at that cost book when they decide to make and sell housing. So I think it's important to be able to extract a cost multiplier from your market. So we did include a cost multiplier here. You don't need to use it, but if the cost data does not line up with your market, this would be a way to handle that. I want to start with an example, and this is kind of patterned after Solomon. We're going to start at the end and say we think that the that the manufactured house on the site is worth $125,000, site value $25,000, and depreciated site improvements of 10. Let's use a quality rating of 4. And section 1, I'm just going to say 840 square feet. So something like a 14 by 60. I think that is what that works out to be. 60 by 14. It has a perimeter of 148 feet. I'll put that right here for skirting. That's a perimeter unit of unit of cost. Because I believe that the people that are out there in the field are doing a sketch of the total structure, you can just leave it all right here. You don't have to break it out per section, but it treats it all as one total amount of GLA. Now, to add other units or components, if you look at the second page over here of the additional cost for manufactured housing, it says that central air is $3,600 for up to a 1,100 square foot building. If it's a through the wall unit, it's quite a bit less. Let's say $1,600. This is a unit of one central air unit at $1,600. And then built-ins are things like a dishwasher. Let's say we have a dishwasher, and we think based on this range here, it's $1,100. And then I'm going to skip the porches and decks and so on. I'm going to skip the garage for a minute. The only thing I want to add is the snow load capacity. So the units there are the square feet of the building, 840 square feet. And you can see down here, like for a 50-pound design load for snow, I'm just going to say 218. And of course, your judgment is required to dial this in for your market. So now when I click calculate, the first thing it did is it figured out the total of the components, 4,531, and it brings that right up here to the modified component subtotal, and that kind of follows the format of the 1004C. The GLA subtotal is 101.65. That is this amount of GLA, 840, and based on this quality rating, it's $101.65. And that, again, I think that's the label from the 1004C. Economic life on this one is 40 years. That's an assumption built into the cost data that a Q4 unit has a lifespan of 40 years. Let's see if we can get that photo up here. So there it is, a class 4. That's kind of a moderate quality manufactured house. The one I did was more like this, but there we are with class 4. And notice I've got virtually no depreciation here. 10. And 11. Okay, so now we've got $917 worth of depreciation. It still has a 0 effective age, so it comes up blank. Maybe we should change that. But this is more of a trade-off tool. I think appraisers are primarily curators of data, and we want to figure out what makes the most sense. Maybe the site value should be higher. Maybe it's 35, and this should be more like 8. So now we have a scenario where it's 101.65 for the GLA. That's a total of $85,000. The components are $4,500. The total replacement cost is $89. Now, the way that we figure out the depreciation is we know the cost, and here's what the market is paying for the house. They're paying $125 minus the land, 35. So now we're down to 90, if my math is correct, and then minus 8. So they're paying 82 for the house. So we've got this amount of depreciation, 79.17, and that, if you divide that by the cost, you'll end up with a percentage of depreciation that aligns with this effective age of 4 years. So there's that contributory value again. 82 is what you have left after you subtract 35,000 and 8,000 from 125. There's the 82,000. So the contributory value percentage, and that's what we're really trying to work toward, is what does the manufactured housing unit add to the value of the land? Well, it adds 91% of its cost. It only contributes 82,000, but the total cost is 89.9. So there's a 91% contributory value percentage. The reason that's helpful is it does give you support for effective age, and economic life is assumed in the cost data. It gives you the remaining economic life, and that's important because in USPAP, it states that an appraiser must avoid making an unsupported assumption or premise about market area trends, which we're all very aware of. We need to know if the market is increasing or decreasing and by how much. But then also effective age and remaining life, which are often missed by appraisers. And I think it's important to do the cost approach. Well, we're required to, I guess, on the 1004C, but on any appraisal, to me, this is the way to support effective age and remaining economic life. Now, there's another relationship that's kind of interesting to me. If you divide 36 by 40, 36 divided by 40, that's the percent of contributory value, right? The market's paying 90%. There's a little bit of rounding here, but it must be this remaining economic life must be like 36.4 or something. But it's rounded off here. Here is where we see the true percentage of contributory value of the building. And if we go through and look at the cost of one more square foot of GLA, that's $67.31 is 91% of the cost of one more foot. Just for a second, I want to change the depreciation back to 0. So let's make this 132 for a minute. $132.9. Okay, so now we're back to a 0 effective age. We've got the market paying 100% of the building's cost, but it's not the average cost, this 101.65. It's the cost of one more foot, which we've figured out to build our table of data that's used behind Solomon. So the market is, if they're paying 100% of cost, it's $73. There's the shower bath, the half bath, a square foot of deck or porch is both the same cost. And a covered deck or porch costs a little bit more to have that covered. And there's our 240 square foot carport and our 240 square foot garage. Now, we've taken this garage data not from the manufactured section, we've taken that from the single family section, because to me, a frame construction garage is the same cost, whether it's built next to a manufactured home or next to a single family house. That was my logic. The way that they say to do that within the cost data, when we get to garages, they say figure the garage cost per square foot at 2/3 of the home cost per square foot. So at this point, we've got this $101.65. I'm going to get my calculator out again. So 101.65 times 0.67. So they're saying the garage calculated that way should be worth $68.11. So let's check it out. 240 square feet times 68.11. And you can see that, 68.11. Let's just use 68. There it is, $16,320. The cost per the single family section is $15,456. Remember, they said it was about 2/3. Let's say about could include $66. So now they're getting very similar, $65 per foot. So again, this is a tool for you to use to balance what you're more certain of with what you're less certain of, right? None of this is a physics or a chemistry equation. This is you interacting with the MLS data, your inspection of the property, and the cost data to see what makes most sense to you, because you are a curator and an analyst of data. And by the way, this is explaining the cost classes in written out form. So that's what our thinking is on Solomon. Oh, notice that when we added the garage, this $15,000 cost went over here to the modified subtotal, and now we've got more depreciation because there's more cost. So now we're down to a contributory value percentage of 85%. 85% of 40 is this 34, and 40 minus 34 is that 6 for the effective age. You really need to be an appraiser to understand how to use this. And even though I am an appraiser, I'm not sure if we've got the layout and the calculations correct, and that's why we've invited you to take a look and see if you're interested in becoming a beta tester. Now, some other things that I've noticed in the way that they calculate cost in the manufactured cost book is that something like a screen enclosure, that is per lineal foot. Let me see where it is here. There is this, okay, here we go. Screen wall and enclosure per 8-foot wall. So an 8-foot high wall, 1 lineal foot is worth $69. So in this case, we would use, let's say it's a screen wall that's it's a 10 by 10 screen porch. So there would be 40 feet of screen wall. If one of them was attached to the house, it would be 30 feet. And this screen wall enclosure is $69 a foot. So again, now we have more cost, and we have, because there's more cost at a given market value and site value, we've got more depreciation. The market's paying a smaller percentage of cost. Now, the reason I think it's important to have this cost multiplier is, and you probably should try to do this if it's possible, try to find a manufactured house in your market that does have, where you do know the land value and you can estimate the site improvements. Then you will find out how accurate the cost data is. So let's say we know a market value is 135. We're very certain about the site value at 35, and we've estimated the site improvements at 8. So it looks like $15,000 of depreciation cannot be true for this new construction property that's sold for 135. So what you would do is come down here and add cost until subtract cost until the depreciation got to 0. So let's start off with minus 10. See, we're down to 4% depreciation, minus 12. So now we've got very little depreciation, minus 13. So that's pretty close to the magic number. It's like 14 to 15%. And what you are doing here is you're extracting a cost multiplier, because you know that this is the new construction cost, or the new installed cost of manufactured housing. There's the site value and the site improvements. Now, if we focus a little bit closer over here on some of the things that are included in manufactured housing, first they say that there could be a permanent foundation. So these costs include setting the structure on piers. If there is a slab poured, you can see that the cost estimated here, and you would include that right over here. You might say foundation or permanent foundation. So permanent foundation, I would say 1 is the unit, and let's say that you think 15,000 is the correct number, from these ranges. So now we're back to a situation where we've got higher cost, and we've got more depreciation, we've got higher effective age, and we've got lower grid adjustments. Now, the idea of starting with the market value and working backwards toward effective age is, to me, easier to do in the cost approach than going the other way and figuring out the cost first and then guessing at a rate of depreciation to figure out an indication of value. This is more of a tool that helps you sort out what makes sense as far as site value, cost, and the features to get to a reasonable cost approach, reasonable effective age for the building you're working on, and a reasonable remaining economic life. And then, of course, these adjustments. When you are doing it this way, this is actually the scientific method where you're starting out with a hypothesis. This is the hypothesis of value. And you're an analyst, right? So, and you want to put on your lab coat now and be a scientist. So what you do is you experiment, you design an experiment and then you test the hypothesis. Here's the hypothesis test. You would put these numbers in the grid and you would see if the comparables that you're using point to this value. If they point to a different value, then you would change this. That's called revising the hypothesis. And if it's pointing in that direction, then you would keep it, and then you would be done with this phase of the report. But let's say you did this, and the market, the comparables that you had show that it was really worth about 145. When I click calculate, now we've got less depreciation. The effective age just went down, and the adjustment rates went up. So this is a tool used to balance what you know with what you don't know. It's more about probable values than exact values for each of these different components. And it's a way for you to use the scientific method to analyze cost, site value, and depreciation, other factors that go into doing a manufactured house assignment, and give it your best approach to the data. Here's the data. This is published for the last 45 years by National Building Cost. And this is just a tool that we're proposing for how to make sense of this data and use the 1004C to report the results.